Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you to those who decided to take the poll yesterday. I agree with the majority of you that information is important, so I will continue releasing these weekly market updates. But today, let's go ahead and take a look at what has changed in the general market, what's going on with volume, rejections, spot versus contract rates, and diesel prices, and then we'll take a look at the spot market and how it has changed for dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds. Ready? Let's go! So as always, we're going to start with the net change in carrier authorities. So as of last Friday, we lost an additional 12 carriers net. Now, what about the spot versus contract rates? Well, the blue line is 2024 compared to 2023 in the pink line. As you can see, contract carriers are actually getting paid less. The higher the line is, the smaller the margin between what spot and contract carriers earn. They're currently getting paid 63 cents per mile more than those spot carriers. Now, what about the volume? Well, the blue line is 2024 and the pink is last year. And something that we can see is that volume for the first time this year pretty much fell below 2023 levels. What's causing this? I am not sure. What about those rejections? Well, the rejections have been climbing, although they did make a U-turn just in the past few days. Currently, rejections are at 5.7%, just about. They did hit the 6% mark a few days ago and then kind of made a turnaround. And finally, last but not least, of course, we have to talk about those diesel prices. So what we have here is we have the blue line, which is us in 2024, the pink is 2023, and the green is 2022. And one thing that we see is that diesel prices hit their lowest point in 2 years. And currently, the average diesel price on a national level is $3.59 per gallon. All right, so now let's talk about the spot market, starting with dry vans. This data is from FTR Intel, and what we can see is that dry vans actually saw a 4-cent decrease week over week. However, compared to last year, on the spot market, dry vans are getting paid about 1% above those 2023 levels. Over the past 5 years, rates are down 11%. Volumes on the spot market for dry vans increased by 1.7%. There is no change compared to last year, and they're 33% lower if we're taking a look at the 5-year average. Now, let's talk about market movers for a moment in the general market for dry vans to see what is going on. And first, we're going to take a look at these volumes, and red means there was a decrease in volume, blue means there was an increase. And for the most part, the map is red, which means that we saw a lot of decreases in volumes for dry vans, which is interesting considering the fact that we are approaching those holidays right now. Now, in terms of the rejections, last week, I believe it was pretty much a blue map. Rejections skyrocketed for dry vans everywhere. This week, not so much. A lot more red, a lot more places where people are not rejecting as much freight. Now, the question is, what is happening in the contract to spot market? Where is the volume going from the contract side to the spot side? Well, the top 5 markets where more volume hits the spot market for dry vans is Green Bay, Wisconsin, Ontario, California, Los Angeles, California, Columbus, Ohio, and Rock Island, Illinois. Now, this obviously tells us everything about volumes. It tells us nothing about the load to truck ratios, which end up affecting the rates, right? So for that, we have to look at the capacity side on the spot market in those areas. Green Bay, Wisconsin is a lukewarm market. However, it's surrounded by overcapacity. Now, Ontario and Los Angeles are hot markets by themselves, but now they are also surrounded by overcapacity, which means those deadheading trucks will be kind of driving the rates down. Columbus, Ohio is warm and there is some extra capacity around, not too much. Rock Island, Illinois is a bad market because, first of all, it's a cool market. There are more trucks posted than there are loads, and there is overcapacity surrounding it. All right, what about those reefers? Well, on the spot market, reefers actually saw a 4-cent increase week over week in the rate per mile, which is about 2% higher than this time last year. However, according to the 5-year average, reefer rates are down 7%. Now, volumes week over week saw an increase of 5.6% on the spot market. However, compared to last year, they're down 2.5% and down 33% over the 5-year average. Now, in terms of the market movers, let's take a look at the volumes map first. A lot of red also. Volumes went down in the general market for reefers. Again, question mark. Why is this happening? And if we take a look at rejections, we'll see there's also a lot of red. There's some blue in the Nebraska area. That's where rejections increased, Idaho, Utah, but a lot of red going on. So yeah, it's interesting to see how volumes kind of tumbled down. Now, in terms of the contract to spot, which markets actually see more contract volume moving to the spot market, those are Fargo, North Dakota, Joplin, Missouri, Joliet, Illinois, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But if we take a look at the capacity side in these markets, on the spot market, we see that Fargo and Joplin, they are warm markets and they have normal capacity around, not too much. Joliet, Illinois is also warm, but there's extra capacity around. And Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, these are hot markets by themselves, but there is some capacity surrounding, so there is the possibility of people deadheading to these areas in order to find their next load. Finally, we have flatbeds, and something I'm noticing is the 3 equipment types, they either saw a 4-cent increase or 4-cent decrease week over week. It's very interesting. So flatbeds actually saw a 4-cent decrease week over week in the spot rates. Currently, the rate per mile is $2.21 on average, which is what I'm seeing. It's horrific. Year over year, there's absolutely no change. Over the past 5 years, rates are down 5%. Volumes week over week for flatbeds went down by 5.5%. However, they're 40% higher than this time last year. And in terms of the 5-year average, volumes are down 12%. Now, let's try to figure out what are the better areas for those flatbeds. Well, for that, I make my own maps using truck stop data. This is the load map. So this shows you where the loads come out of. The darker a state is, it is by state. The darker a state is, the more loads come out of those areas. And the darkest are Alabama and Oregon. But the question now is, what about the capacity? So the darker an area is, the more capacity hangs out in those states. Texas and Florida are the ones with a ton of flatbeds. California, Georgia, North Carolina also have a lot of flatbeds. Not as many flatbeds hanging out in the Pacific Northwest, as well as the northern states and the northeastern states. Now, putting these two together, we can figure out the load to truck ratio averages for those states. The burgundy red, like Texas, this is severe overcapacity. It's very hard to negotiate a better rate unless you're willing to go to a really, really crappy area. Red, like Nevada, Utah, Colorado, it's like a belt almost. Those also have overcapacity. It's less than a load per truck. Anything orange, like Montana, Minnesota, this is equilibrium. There's about 1 to 1.5 loads per truck. Yellow, like Arkansas, this is slight under capacity. It's between 1.5 to 2 loads per truck there. Anything very light green, like Maine, for example, that is under capacity, 2 to 3 loads per truck. Maine is surrounded, though, by areas that have overcapacity, so be careful. Anything that is darker green, like Mississippi, Alabama, or Washington, there is moderate undercapacity, 3 to 10 loads per truck. And the only state with severe undercapacity right now, according to the averages, is Oregon. Now, something to remember, I repeat it in every video, but it's worth mentioning once again for those who are new to these videos. Oregon and Washington are notorious for having brokers post one load 500 different times, which means that it will seem like there are more loads than there actually are. However, from personal experience, yes, Washington and Oregon, there is stuff to choose from. So I've said this before, and I'm going to repeat it again. Sometimes when you're looking at the data that I show in the weekly market updates, you're looking at this data and technically it looks like it's better. It's showing better signs than, for example, a month ago. But when you compare it to your own experience, it makes the data look like a bunch of doo-doo. So why does this happen? And I feel it too. This week has been an absolute nightmare. Well, that's because data focuses on just numbers, cold, hard numbers, and doesn't even take into consideration anything else like the human factor, for example. To top it off, it's a game of averages. You might feel like the data is justified when you end up in a good market, and the next day you'll end up in a bad market and you feel like this data is completely off. The problem is this data looks at everything, averages it out, and doesn't take into consideration that different markets will be vastly different from one another. What we need to see is the data changing in a positive direction in a big way over a prolonged period of time in order for it to kind of coincide with what we actually experience when we are working in the trucking industry. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me and watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.